Here's something nobody tells you. There are people who can walk into a room full of others, laugh at the right moments, say the right things, and go home feeling completely hollow. Not tired, not introverted, hollow. Like the entire interaction cost them something real and got them nothing back. If you know that feeling, that specific, quiet exhaustion after socializing with people who should feel like friends, but somehow don't, then this video is going to explain something about you that you've probably never been able to put into words. Because psychology doesn't say people with few or no friends are broken. It says their minds work differently. And different, in this case, runs deeper than most people ever get to go. What you're about to hear isn't validation for the sake of it. It's 5 psychological patterns, real ones, that consistently show up in people who move through life with small circles or no close friends at all. I want you to pay attention to point 5 especially, not because it's the most flattering, because it's the most honest, and it's the one that will actually change how you see yourself when this is over. The first thing psychology tells us about people with few friends is this: they have an extraordinarily low tolerance for inauthenticity. Most people can tolerate, even enjoy, surface-level socializing, the small talk, the performative laughter, the friendships built on convenience rather than genuine connection. They don't necessarily notice when someone is wearing a social mask, or if they do, they brush it off. But certain minds can't do that. Research on self-awareness shows that as emotional intelligence increases, so does sensitivity to dishonest behavior. People who think deeply about themselves and others become almost allergic to performative interaction. They don't just find it boring, they find it physically draining. If this is you, you've probably been in rooms full of people and felt completely alone. Not because no one was talking to you, but because nobody was being real. And so, quietly, over time, you stopped chasing those rooms. This isn't social failure. This is your mind protecting you from emotional noise. You have what psychologists call an authenticity threshold, a non-negotiable baseline for what a relationship needs to be before you'll invest in it. Most people don't meet it, not because they're bad people, but because genuine depth is genuinely rare. Here's something almost nobody says out loud. People with few friends aren't avoiding connection. They're avoiding cheap connection. There's a paradox at the heart of this personality type. The very thing that makes them lonely is the same thing that makes them capable of extraordinary intimacy. They feel deeply. They think deeply. They want to connect deeply. But the world mostly offers shallow. Psychologists who study introversion and what's called need for cognition, the drive to think deeply about things, consistently find that people high in this trait are uncomfortable with surface-level interaction. It's not shyness. It's not social anxiety, though those can overlap. It's that their brain genuinely doesn't know what to do with a conversation that has no substance. Small talk isn't just boring to them, it's almost disorienting, like being handed a menu in a language you don't speak. So they opt out. They sit with the discomfort of fewer friendships, rather than fill that space with conversations that leave them feeling emptier than before. And here's what that means. If you're this kind of person, you are not incapable of friendship. You are waiting for the specific, rare kind that actually satisfies you. That's not a flaw, that's a standard. Here's something that explains a lot, and that almost nobody talks about in plain language. Some people's nervous systems process the world more intensely than others. Not metaphorically, neurologically. When they walk into a social situation, their brain isn't just following the conversation, it's tracking everything. The slight tension in someone's voice, the micro-expression that flashed for half a second before the smile, the energy shift in the room when a certain person walked in. Most people's brains filter that out. Yours doesn't. And that costs something. Every social interaction runs on mental fuel, and you're burning significantly more of it than the person standing next to you, even if you're both saying the same things, laughing at the same jokes, appearing equally present. This is why you can come home from an evening that looked fine from the outside and feel like you ran a marathon. This is why you need hours alone after being around people. Not because you dislike them, but because your brain just finished doing 3 times the work theirs did. Researchers call this high environmental sensitivity. It's present in roughly 1 in 5 people. And here's what matters. It's not a flaw in your wiring. it's a feature. The same sensitivity that drains you socially is the same one that makes you perceptive, empathetic, and capable of reading situations most people miss entirely. You're not exhausted because something is wrong with you. You're exhausted because your mind is always working, even when you wish it would stop. This one is the pattern nobody names, but once you hear it, you'll see it everywhere. Most people regulate their emotions through other people. They call someone when they're anxious. They need to be around others when they're sad. They feel better when they're included, texted back, validated. That's not weakness. That's how the majority of human nervous systems are designed to work. But some people developed a different system. Through temperament, or through early experiences that made depending on others feel risky, they learn to process everything internally. They sit with their own pain until it passes. They solve their own problems. They find their own meaning. They don't reach out, not because they don't feel things, but because somewhere along the way, reaching out stopped feeling safe. And here's where it gets painful, because this self-sufficiency, this quiet strength, looks from the outside like someone who doesn't need people, so people stop offering. They assume you're fine. They stop checking in. They drift. And you let them, because asking them to stay feels like more vulnerability than you're willing to risk. The result is a slow, invisible isolation. Not dramatic. Nobody fought. Nobody left badly. The friendships just thinned out, until one day you looked around and the circle was almost gone. Psychologists call this low social dependency, but what it actually feels like is this: wanting connection deeply and having almost no idea how to ask for it without feeling exposed. You're not cold. You didn't stop needing people. You just got very, very good at pretending you didn't. This is the point most psychology content skips, and I think it's the most honest one. Almost every person who has walked through life with few or no friends carries something from the past that shaped how they approach trust. A betrayal that came out of nowhere, a friendship that ended badly and without explanation, childhood experiences that made closeness feel dangerous, repeated patterns of choosing people who didn't choose them back. The brain is a learning machine, and when it learns that opening up leads to pain, it starts building walls. Not consciously, not dramatically, just quietly, systematically, raising the threshold for how much someone has to prove before they're allowed in. Psychologists call this a trust schema, a deeply held internal belief about how safe it is to depend on other people. And once that schema is set to cautious, it filters everything. New people feel like potential threats. Vulnerability feels like a liability. Letting someone close feels like a calculated risk rather than a natural joy. This doesn't mean people with broken trust schemas are destined to be alone. It means they need more time, more consistency, more proof of safety before they can relax. And in a world where most friendships form quickly and casually, that slowness can price them out of the market entirely. But here's what matters. This caution was earned. It was a rational response to real experiences. It protected you when you needed protecting. The question isn't whether you should abandon it, it's whether you can slowly, selectively begin to soften it for the right people. Here's the truth that this whole video has been building toward. Having few or no friends is not always a story about failure. Sometimes it's a story about a mind that processes too deeply for small talk, a nervous system that charges a higher price for social interaction, a trust that was broken before it ever had a chance to fully form. That's not a character flaw, that's a history. And yes, it comes with real loneliness. Not the poetic kind, the actual kind, the Sunday afternoon kind, the kind that sits in your chest when you scroll past photos of groups of people who seem to find it effortless. Don't let anyone tell you that loneliness is just the price of being deep, or rare, or different. It's still hard. It's allowed to be hard. But here's what's also true. The people who have walked the longest through that loneliness, who refuse to fill it with connections that felt hollow, tend to form the most uncommon friendships when they finally find them. Not because they tried harder, because they never stopped knowing exactly what they were looking for. You're not broken, you're specific. And specific people find each other eventually, not by accident, but by finally becoming impossible to miss. Don't subscribe because the algorithm told you to. Subscribe because you're tired of content that makes you feel good for 2 minutes and explains nothing. That's the standard this channel holds itself to. See you in the next one.